about love, something about us. When it is we dance, when it is we don't love us. It will be like highway.
¡Atención, Fer! ¡Alinear! ¡Están Fer! Como defensoras de esta cuna de la revolución de panchos rojos por nuestra patria y por nuestras riquezas, por nuestros pueblos de los 36 naciones. ¡Estamos listos! ¡Siempre listos! ¡Cuadro! ¡Todas! ¡Target armas! ¡Todas! ¡Posición de 4! ¡Columna! ¡Al trote! ¡Guerra civil! ¡Ahora sí! ¡Guerra civil! ¡No tenemos miedo, carajo! ¡No tenemos miedo, carajo! ¡Pedritos! ¡Vamos, columna! ¡Francotiradores! ¡Listos para defender la patria! ¡Para haber traicionado a nuestros pueblos! ¡Y por haber asesinado a nuestros hermanos campesinos en este desbloqueo! ¡Francotirador! ¡Fuego!
Peace, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Jabari Media Team Resistance. Alex Suarez will be here shortly. And we have the absence of Amy for this week. She has some stuff going on. Remember, when I say that we are working class, We are working class. So we're on a little earlier. I'm happy that people are here joining us. I see there's a little crowd. How you guys doing today? Please hit a W in the chat. Please like, share, and subscribe. I think it's very, very important that you do so. I have another clip that I want to show about what's going on in Bolivia. But I'm going to wait until my co-host Alex Suarez joins us. He said, yeah, one moment. So guys, please take the time to like, share, and subscribe and follow us. And also please donate to Jabari Media Cash App. You know, we are very, very pleased with the growth, especially on Meta. There's some beautiful growth on Meta, and we have Alex Suarez with us. Hey, Alex. I played the first 2 Bolivia videos, but I didn't play.
Oh man, I wanted you to wait for me.
My bad.
All right, at least play the third one, bro. Play the third one. Yeah. I can make commentary.
Yes.
You told people what's going on, right? In case they didn't know.
Not yet. So this is the perfect time. I was just about to do it.
Don't play it yet. Don't play it yet. I want to put some background information.
Yeah, no problem. That'll be great, so I can load it. Yep, go right.
You want me to start right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Paz regime is led by a fascist named Rodrigo Paz, who was born in Spain, who represents the elite, the upper white class of the bourgeois of Bolivian society. And Arce, who was the economic minister of Evo Morales, was the last president who helped facilitate Evo Morales returning from exile to Bolivia, who was indigenous president of Bolivia for about 20 years. And unfortunately, there was divisions between Arce and Evo Morales. There was trumped up charges made against Evo Morales. Ultimately, Paz took power because a young, unknown socialist ran and lost. And because of those divisions and because of false promises from Paz, he was able to take power. I don't see you, Jamar, but I guess you're setting up the video. Anyways, he took power, and Arce was arrested. He's still behind bars. Evo Morales is his compound. You've been hearing me talk, right?
Yeah, I heard you the whole time. I just wanted to give you space.
No problem. Evo Morales is held up in his compound in his hometown in Cochabamba and in Bolivia. And there was plans by the CIA and the military forces loyal to Paz to overtake the compound and either kidnap or assassinate Evo Morales. And that's really provoked these protests, not just the privatization, but that they wanted to kill their leader after they had already arrested the other socialist leader, Arce. And so you have groups like, and I'm sure you showed the video already, those indigenous people dressed in red, they're called the Ponchos Rojos. And the Ponchos Rojos are primarily Aymara indigenous people in Bolivia that are rising up against the military forces, demanding that Paz resigns. So that's the context of what we see going on today.
So, quick question on Paz. Let me play. Do you want the video to play with sound, or do you want to show it while we discuss? How would you want to go about with the video?
Play it with sound.
Okay.
I can probably speak over the sound of the commentary. I don't know which of the three it is, though. I might just be quiet, but I would play it with sound. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So Paz basically do you feel that he fooled Bolivians since he was the vice president originally for the previous left-wing president?
Paz was never the vice president. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, see, the research was incorrect because that's what it said. So he was never vice president.
No.
It said that he was vice president.
Not under the socialists.
Yeah, I must have read the wrong document because it mentioned that he was vice president. So guys, this is the scene here.
You might be thinking of what happened in Peru. Pedro Castillo's vice president, one of his former vice presidents betrayed him, and she claimed to be center left. This guy's always claimed to be right wing, but not a fascist, right? He didn't say he was going to privatize everything. Now that he's demonstrating he's a full-on fascist, the people are rising up.
Hermano, estamos dolidos. Y así que carajo que renuncie este presidente de una vez. Caso contrario, no quieren de las policías, sus casas Vamos a marcar, carajo.
He's saying they're with Evo and that Paz has to resign.
¿Qué queremos, compañeros? ¡Denuncia! ¡Que denuncie, carajo! ¡Que denuncie, carajo! ¡El alto de pie!
¡Nunca le olvida! ¡Que denuncie, carajo! ¡Que denuncie, carajo!
Porque este maldito Rodrigo Paz lo está discriminando, lo está reprimiendo. No vamos a permitir como alteños, vecinos del Alto, únanse a los provincias que estamos aquí presentes. No vamos a permitir.
So what they're saying?
He's saying that Paz is discriminating against them and oppressing against them, against the indigenous people.
Que nos reprima de esa manera. No nos intimida este gobierno, no tenemos miedo. Vamos a estar en las calles hasta las últimas consecuencias.
He says we're not going to be intimidated. We're going to continue on the streets to the last of the consequences.
Un albañil, en vez de decirle construir, él hace lo que le da la gana. ¿Quién le va a pagar de eso? Entonces tiene que irse de su casa de ahí nomás.
He's saying people are forced to leave their homes. He's going to compensate them for this injustice.
Right. Right. So that was the report by the APT. Make sure we give them some acknowledgement. So
I want to make a comment about Venezuela. I want to make a comment about Venezuela real quick.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to touch on Al Assad, but I'll tell you this: the so-called American Communist Party, the MAGA commies, as we call them, immediately before we even knew the basic facts, put out a communique on Twitter and said it's time for the Venezuelan people to overthrow Delcy Rodriguez. Now, the reason why I'm silent on this, not only because I need to know more details about something so controversial. Anything I say right now could foment civil war, and it's my revolutionary responsibility to stay out of that and to not have any of my words used in English or Spanish that could hurt the Venezuelan people. It is irresponsible. I'm not taking a side on the Al Assad matter. I'm just saying it's irresponsible for any person, whether they're a MAG commie or whatever, to come and say, now it's time to overthrow Delcy Rodriguez. That would only hurt the Venezuelan people and put somebody in there like Maria Machado. So I was going to be more silent on this, but when I saw the communique, I was outraged. We should not be taking sides like that right now.
You know how Americans are. Can you hear me better? Because I saw in the chat that my mic was a little low. Can you hear me a little better?
I've been hearing you fine all through. I hear you even better now, but I've been hearing you fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to revolution, Americans, we have a disconnect, and we love, even though we try not to. By the way,
that's how the right rose up in Bolivia, because of divisions like that. Sometimes revolutionaries need to be silent and figure things out for ourselves.
And now they're trying to protect evil because they know that evil is the heart of the revolution in Bolivia right now.
Yes.
And a lot of Americans,
sure Evo would free, even though he's a rival, I'm sure Evo, if he came to power again, he would free Arce for the sake of unity.
Oh, yeah.
Because they understand now, in hindsight, that they should have been more united,
Yes, free Arce. We got to make sure we say that. Arce was
and free Pedro Castillo in June. If Roberto Sanchez wins, Pedro Castillo's party, then Pedro Castillo will be freed as well, who's a legitimate president of Peru.
Yeah. So like Americans, we have a disconnect. We don't understand what revolution is because we haven't lived through a revolution in this generation. I'm not talking about the 60s. The 60s was a very close revolution, and Reconstruction era after the Civil War was also a revolution as well. Yeah. So we're the generation that is disconnected from that part. So we shouldn't be critiquing people that are in the middle of their revolution when we don't even have an understanding of what it looks like. That's what makes the Black Panthers so special, because they actually went and saw what revolution looks like across overseas, but we don't have that type of awakeness and mentality.
What's left over from the Black Panthers is groups like Uhuru. That's why it's important for us to show our support for them as well.
Right, brother. Right on. I think what I would just say this about Venezuela: regardless what American progressive and communist anarchists, everybody on the left opinions are, you got to understand that that administration is conducting itself with a gun to their head. At the end of the day, they were threatened. And Delcy Rodriguez, instead of fighting, she did kind of something similar like Evil did, where she had no choice but to compromise because she did not want to put her country into a guerrilla warfare.
But how did Evo compromise Bolivia? I don't get the comparison.
Well, I shouldn't use the term compromise. I would say that Evo, he decided to not go the route of getting into a big warfare and trying to fight. Instead,
I can tell you what Evo did was ran against Arce. I believe his party abandoned him. Evo's party abandoned him, and he took his supporters and made a third party that was another type of socialist party, which divided the vote.
Right.
So in that regard, it could have been a strategic mistake. But to compare that to what Delcy just did, I don't really get it. But like I said, I don't want to get.
Yeah, I wasn't really trying to give it. Yeah, I didn't want to give a comparison. I just wanted to just basically give an understanding that, you know, it's a very particular situation that a lot of Americans wouldn't understand because they're not dealing with a very aggressive empire like the United States, which is seeking to not only starve Cuba, but take Raul Castro and give more pain.
I'll give you another example. When the progressives were in power in Argentina, they passed a law that you cannot be in prison past age 70. I agree with that law. I respect my elders. That's a very good law. And because of that, when the former president and vice president, progressive Argentina, Cristina Fernandez, was convicted on trumped up charges, she didn't have to go to jail because she was already 70 at that point. But here we have a 96-year-old man, a hero of the Cuban Revolution, one of the last survivors of the Cuban Revolution of 1959. And they want to kidnap him because he defended himself from mercenaries on a plane when he was head of the armed forces in Cuba. He wasn't even president of Cuba then in 96. But they gave him responsibility for being head of the armed forces, even if it was him that gave the order. We're talking about mercenaries. We're talking about people like Posada Carriles that blew up airlines that were, Cuban airlines that flew to Venezuela full of civilians. For all they knew, that plane was full of bombs. Okay, so to call that plane that they downed in 96 a civilian plane is ridiculous. And to use that to put an arrest warrant and to threaten a Maduro-style kidnapping against Raul Castro is outrageous.
Yes, and I was looking at the case, and I asked people that were around before me, and that's exactly what they explained to me as well too. As revolutionaries, they were saying
it was a CIA front group, Hermanos de Rescate, or Brothers to the Rescue, as those Gusanos called themselves, was a CIA front group. They were counter-revolutionaries that during the special period when the Cubans economy was weakened because the Soviet Union fell in the 90s, were trying to take advantage to sabotage Cuba. That's the context. And they gave several warnings to the United States, stop sending their brothers to the rescue. And finally, they kept sending them, and then they downed one of the planes. I don't think they had any choice at that point.
Cuba was in self-defense this whole time. Cuba has every right to defend themselves. And people need to stop trying to sit here and pretend that, it's just the government. And because you're denying the fact that your government, the United States, has been starving them for the last 70 years. And the only reason why they were able to be so well put was because they had the Soviet Union. And after the Soviet Union fell, they had to find other means. This has nothing to do with...
I disagree with that statement, though.
You disagree?
The only reason why they were successful is because of Soviet support, you said. I don't agree with that. Soviet support,
they were able to get goods.
They would have crumbled. They would have crumbled in the 90s had they been 100% reliant on Soviet support. It was difficult, but they still the Soviet system. Yeah, I might have misunderstood you, but let me tell you this: the special period, they invented the lung cancer vaccine. So not only did they survive, they thrived when it came to inventing a new vaccine that the Cubans needed that we still don't have because of the embargo. So that shows that the socialist system was not completely reliant on Soviet support either.
Yes, they came up with their own indigenous ways, which is very, very important. And also their healthcare is strictly all indigenous ways that have improved even under blockades, that they were able to go around the world and help other people with their doctors. And if people look at the state of Latin America now, since Cuba had to push back their doctors, you're going to see so much more things that are going on that has not happened in this past few decades since Cuba.
By the way, I love seeing police on the run. That scene with the Poncho Rojos where they outnumber the police and the police are on the run. I'm like, yes. That gave me some hope that Paz is going to resign and get out of there, yeah. Or maybe he'll get imprisoned. That wouldn't be a bad idea either.
Yeah, I heard a rumor that he was exiled to Argentina. That was my mistake. I deleted the comment.
But guess what? That's quite possible, and they haven't revealed it yet because Argentina is right next door, and Malay is a big ally of his. They even said that Malay sent him some weapons.
Oh God, yeah. There's a whole coalition of all the right-wing Latin leaders trying to get rid of all the left Latin leaders. There was a whole
Cast in Argentina, not Argentina. Cast in Chile is another right winger that I'm sure is supporting the pro-pass people. You know, the anti-Evo people. He's supporting against the pro-Evo people. Yeah, man. It's definitely a very aggressive time. Would you compare this to the Reagan era with this Don Roll doctrine that is for Latin America that Trump is trying to? Well, actually, I'm sure that you brought up the Reagan era. Let me get into that. The reason why, since the 1980s, there's been such an increase of Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons presence in Latin America is because they were sent by the CIA. Did you hear about this? Yeah,
yes,
so a lot of those, I figured you'd know about it. You're very well versed in history. But for people that don't know, the Catholic Church at that time in Latin America, in El Salvador and Peru and all those countries, was very progressive. And they had a philosophy called liberation theology. Which found things that were, that coincided with Marxism that were in the Bible based on their interpretation of the Bible. And so because those Catholic priests were in league with the socialists and backing those revolutionary progressive governments, the United States found a way to indoctrinate people in Latin America and they to make them become anti-Catholic. They use religion. And so, yes, it's similar to what's going on now. It's a consequence of that, what's going on now. Perfect example. A lot of right-wing Christian groups, including Latin right-wing Christian groups in the United States, love Bukele. They don't care that Bukele used a concentration camp to take innocent Venezuelans, that some of them were anti-Chavistas, into his dungeon on behalf of Trump. These people that were, initially allies of Trump, they ignore all of that because they say Bukele is a Christian. And it's like, are you kidding me? Because he's rounding up all these poor, Salvadorians and falsely accusing them and then saying, oh, look, I'm going after crime and making concentration camps. And it's like they're ignoring all these crimes from the Bukele regime because he says he's a Christian. And he's not a Catholic. When we say Christian, we're talking about those right-wing Protestant groups that were imposed by the United States. And actually goes back further than the 1980s. It goes to I believe 1850s, prior to the Civil War in the United States. The United States invaded Mexico and burned down all the churches they could. And that's part of the reason why the Irish recruits, who were primarily Catholic, ended up changing sides to the Mexican side because they got tired of seeing their Catholic compatriots being persecuted. So they used the religion of Protestantism, saying that we're the superior Anglo-Saxon religion, as a justification to expand slavery, to steal Mexican land, to meddle in Latin America. So it really goes all the way back to the 1850s.
Yes. So 1850s, and this was actually around the time of the Alamo as well, too?
Yeah, that was part of it because
they had the first black Mexican president.
Well, Texas, let me explain. So Texas was first part of Mexico, then it was own republic, and then became part of the United States. And so it was in the period where it was a republic, but there were still parts of Texas where they wanted it returned to Mexico. Therefore, there was a fight with Santa Anna and the white Americans that were in the Alamo. The thing is, how it's told in our mythology is that they were heroes. They were invaders. They were trying to force Texas to be part of the United States, to leave the republic and not be part of Mexico. Yeah, the Alamo, they showed them as if they're the what were they called? Those Greek soldiers, the Spartans, like the 300 Spartans that stood up against the whole Persian army. Those guys were heroes. Absolutely. They were defending the land from foreign invaders. Those guys were heroes. But the people of the Alamo, they were on native and Mexican land. They were the invaders, not the other way around.
Yeah, and also they don't talk about in the history, which is very important for people that are listening that don't know much about the Alamo, that the Texans were so crazy that they were so pissed off that the Mexican president was black at the time.
No, the first cowboys were black. The first cowboys were runaway slaves, or emancipated slaves that went out west and became cowboys. And Hollywood stole that culture from them too.
Yeah, they called the white cowboys cow hands back in them days, and the cowboy is actually a slur, and now
Yeah,
it's
because they were
accepted.
not calling them men; they were calling them boys. Absolutely. Even the name
Right,
is black in origin, but Hollywood completely
right.
covered that up. Yeah.
And the fighters of the Alamo and everyone that supported them, they were so pissed off at Mexico for abolishing slavery, they started
Yeah.
kidnapping, black passing Mexicans and throwing them into slavery. That was the
Yeah.
retaliation for losing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of racist history that's not really told because in
When
the
they say
Southern
remember the
storybooks, the
Alamo, I
hero,
say, yeah, remember the Alamo, that you were the invaders. It's like that's why the Mexicans say we didn't cross the border crossed us. All that
right.
land, the so-called Southwest, was part of Mexico. The northern half of it was stolen.
There's a lot I could go on that history. Very, very much, very much. I have read some atrocious shit, but we don't have to talk about that as
Well, I'm gonna tell you, the
detail
Pope right now, he acts more like he acts more like the prior Pope. He's a very
Right.
progressive Pope, despite being American. He's also Peruvian. He has Peruvian citizenship. He served in the Augustinian order in Peru, where my father was educated in Augustinian Peru as well. The Augustinians are more progressive Catholics, like the Jesuits. So yeah, I'm not surprised he's turning out to be progressive, that he's standing up to Trump. So yeah, you kind of see that happening now. What they started in the 1980s, indoctrinating Hispanics to be Protestant, to hate Catholics. You're kind of seeing that now as well, right? And you have a couple of fake Catholics. Marco Rubio used to be a Mormon.
Right.
And so Marco Rubio's all over the place, bro. Like he withdrew from his race. He said, I'm never going to run again. And then he ran in the generals and won again. Or he says, I'm never going to be Catholic again. He converted to Mormonism. Now he's Catholic again. Oh, my family fled Fidel Castro. No, your family fled Batista. Like if it's not one lie, it's another. So Marco Rubio, as far as I'm concerned, is a fake Catholic. I can say that with having half my family of the Catholic background. And also,
JD Vance is a fake Catholic too.
Vance is not a real Catholic either. He wasn't baptized. Vance is a guy who like converted in his 30s to Catholicism. So these guys, they wanted an audience with the Pope after Trump dissed them, and the Pope's like, no, you're not coming back to the Vatican. I'm not meeting with you. He's fed up, and I don't blame him.
No, I don't blame him at all. Alex Suarez, talk about your book though. Let's get your book plugged in.
I did mention my father, yeah. So anybody can go on Amazon. And if they put in, I mean, it was published just very recently on the 20th of this month. But if they put in Memories with My Father, it should show up. If it doesn't, put that alongside my Twitter name, which was my pen name, which is Al R. Suarez. Like if you want to look me up on Twitter, I'm Al R. Suarez #2. So that's AL, the letter R without a period, SUAREZ. If you put that as the author name, you'll see the new book out. It's going to be in Spanish soon. It's the biography of my father's life, not only my experiences with him, but his life story, which is a fascinating story of an immigrant who reached the top of education system. He got 2 master's degree from Harvard in Boston, where I was born, and then faced incredible obstacles, had to leave the country, discrimination. He faced the family courts that was very biased. Lost custody of us. It was a long custody battle that was very costly to him and to himself later in life, which he's going through now. And so I expose all that in the book. A lot of people say, like, you're writing a biography of your father. What has to do with politics? It has a lot to do with politics. The book is highly political. It shows the contradictions of the U.S. capitalist system and its treatment of immigrants, which still has a lot of meaning today.
Right.
And he immigrated all the way back in 1981,
And I just put the link in the actually that link looks very weird. Let me redo it. I'm putting the link right now.
Amazon link a lot of times long, but it should still bring the person there. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, then good. Yeah, man. I got my copy coming in. Very excited to read it. Congratulations. This is your second book, right?
My 17th.
You have 17 books?
Yeah, in Spanish and Italian. This one's only going to be translated to Italian so far. But
I'm way off.
The thing is, it's my first book published by a publisher. My other 16 books were self-published, so this is very significant. Yeah, I'm going to start the marketing on it soon too. Yeah,
very well. Congratulations again. So everybody, the link is in the comment section. It's going to be in the description later as soon as I get a chance. Please support Alex Suarez. This is his first book from a publisher. And it's
available on hard copy, paper, and Kindle. And I spoke with the publisher. The initial price, I brought it down. I wanted to be affordable for the working class. For example, if you get a paper copy, it's only $11.99. So, and it's a 200-page book. It's not a short book. It's not a long book. It's a medium-sized book and a lot of important information in there. So,
thank you, Extra Bola, for your comments that you have been giving, and also thank you for the compliment. Great show. Thank you so much.
Well, actually, I went on the show of that gentleman. I can't think of his name, but he was one of the commentators. Remember, there was a guy who said he wanted me on his show.
Yeah, Warren. Yep.
Yeah, Warren. Yeah,
Warren.
I got on his show a couple days ago. It was a great conversation. I put an excerpt of that show with his co-host out, where they asked me about the collapse of the U.S. empire. Did you see that?
Yes. Great clip. Very good.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the nearest comparison, if you want to look near in history, right? Because you could compare it to the Roman Empire, you could compare it to the French Revolution, but I think it will look a lot like the Bolshevik Revolution. Because it's definitely not going to come out through votes. I'll tell you that, right? Because the Supreme Court got the last of the voters' rights. I mean, that's indisputable at this point. Yeah.
We are definitely poised for we are definitely in World War III, and the bourgeoisies will be very focused on World War III, which is, it was World War I at the time, which is when the Bolsheviks was able to.
Yeah, it was towards the end of World War I, the Bolshevik Revolution. That's right. Yeah.
Right. So I can see that happening. Karl Marx, he had a theory. I always got to bring up Karl Marx because I'm a Marxist. He had a theory that it will be the first world nations that will be revolutionary. He was wrong. It actually wasn't. It was the third world nations that were able to be revolutionary. So this will be a first time if it does happen, because there's so much animosity and so much anger.
Yeah, but think about it. Russia was not a third world country during the Bolshevik Revolution. It was a second. Hear me out. It was a second world country.
Okay.
So yeah. Germany at that time in 1917, they had their own attempt at revolution as well. In 1918, Karl Luxemburg, that was crushed viciously. But
rest in peace.
Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yes. They were the leaders of that, and they were executed.
Yes.
But I was going to tell you, so Germany was, because at this time, 1917, the United States was not that strong. Germany was a very strong economy at that time, despite having some losses from World War I. They lost the war. But part of the reason why they had all those war reparations and made Germany pay all that money is because they were pretty rich. They were a strong economy, and they wanted to take advantage of them. Backfired later with the rise of fascism, but. And so that's why you see that with World War II. You had the Marshall Plan, the opposite. They helped rebuild Germany, but it built bases there at the same time. But so Russia was a backward country, had a lot of poverty, but because of its length, because how long it was, how large it was, and because of its natural resources, was a second world country.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right that after the Russian Revolution, a lot of countries that rose up, Vietnam and Latin America and all those countries, those were third world countries. So in that sense, Marx was wrong. But the first major revolution in the 20th century was in a second world country. Right?
Mm-hmm. Where would you put Portugal in that? Would you say Portugal was third world? No, right?
Right now, Portugal is a second world. Portugal is one of the poorest countries in Europe.
Because when they had their revolution,
what part of it is? You could have even a great president in Portugal. They're not going to be that rich because they're a small country. Right. So is the Netherlands, but their commerce doesn't work the same way in Portugal like it does in the Netherlands. There's also cultural differences, and I can tell you because I lived in Spain, which is a very similar culture to Portugal. They have a thing called La Siesta, and La Siesta means from 1 o'clock to 4. Think about it. Every day of the week, Monday through Friday, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., everything's closed. The pharmacy, everything. Everybody goes home, they take a long nap, they have a long lunch, and they come back at 4 p.m., they work till 8 p.m., so they work the same amount of hours. But because they have that huge siesta time, and it drives you nuts. The only places that are open 1 to 4 o'clock. I lived there for 3 years. It drove me nuts. I never got used to it. The only place that's open from 1 to 4 at that time are the Chinese stores, because the Chinese keep working.
Right.
But everywhere else, they're closed. So the Netherlands, like Germany, they don't have that law. You still work at 1 to 4, so they have a strong economy because the people are working throughout the day. They're not taking that big break. So yeah, that's why Spain and Portugal. Spain's richer than Portugal. It's larger, has more resources. But that's why Spain and Portugal are among the poorest countries in the EU. I would say Spain is still a first world country. Portugal is borderline. Portugal is about second world, and that's going to be whoever's president in Portugal because they're a smaller country.
Yeah, and my theory is that one of the reasons why guys, this is what happens in history. So just bear with. We gotta get to the third part of the agenda, but look, I have to say this though. I think that the reason what helped the South African government, the apartheid South African government, be defeated is when Portugal went into their revolution and they had to give up their colonies, and Angola was one of their colonies. And I feel like the South African apartheid was overstretching because they wanted to expand, just like Israel. And when they went into Angola and Fidel Castro met them with an ass whooping, it brought apart the decline of their power.
Yeah, I was unaware of that. I know the history there, and I know that Angola used to be a Portuguese colony, but I didn't realize they withdrew right before that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I recently read up on that. So when we brought the conversation, it kind of reminded me of my reading. So
for example, the country of Cameroon in Africa. Cameroon means shrimp in Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean in Portuguese.
Ooh. So
yeah, so they saw these countries as just means to extract, shrimp or whatever other resource they were trying. They literally called the country shrimp.
Right. And this is why France wants to keep a hold, because France will lose so much stature in their economic greatness if they lose Africa. You know what I mean? This is why you see Macron parading around in Kenya and acting like, oh, I'm a pan. Did you see that? He called himself and said in France.
Kenya was never a French colony. Kenya's only ever been a British colony. So I don't even know what the hell he's doing there.
He's trying to convince Africans to not leave us like the Sahel did.
Yeah, but the Kenyans, who are they going to leave? The Kenyans are independent. They used to be a British colony. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Yeah, maybe he figured, well, we have a sellout president in Kenya. He's friendly to the West. Let me just go there and see if we can do business with him, I guess.
Right. And I want to give a shout out to the Kenyans that definitely protest, even though they got tear gassed and all those atrocious things that happened to them when they were rebelling, because they were very unhappy that Macron was there.
By the way, the French and the British are very close collaborators with one another, because, back in the 1970s or maybe even 1960s, they left these countries, but were they economically independent? No, they maintained their corporations there. But now in countries like Burkina Faso, that they threw out the French corporations. Now you're seeing those tensions too.
Let's compare notes on World War I, because this is why the French was able to get into that. A lot of people in the storybooks in America, I don't know how it is in the other countries, when the prince was assassinated, was it a Hungarian prince that was assassinated?
It was somewhere in Yugoslavia.
When he was assassinated, they said that is what started World War III. But they don't understand.
You mean World War
I. But they don't understand that all of the imperialist countries overstretched their reach in around that time, and they started beefing with each other on what lands they could take and what lands they could conquer.
Do you know all the heads of state of the European nations were first cousins then? They were all the grandchildren of Queen Elizabeth. And they did it on purpose because they figured they're never going to fight each other if they're related. Right. No, they're still going to fight each other.
It still did. That's what I'm saying. People that are listening, this is the real. They started beefing with each other. That was the whole point of World War I. And how do I know that? Because towards the end of World War I, what happens? King George gets a meeting. And what does he do? They break up Africa. They assign Africa, all parts, to European imperialist powers. They sold those nations. This is what Africa has been fighting till this day. The colonial powers holding them because they literally balkanized that continent after World War I. You understand? This is the plight of what Africans have been dealing with since today. So that was what World War I was about.
Not only that, they made it illegal in 1530, I believe, for native peoples under the Spanish rule to be enslaved. Bartolome de las Casas, they talk of him about it being a great progressive priest, but he was racist against blacks. He might have not been racist against natives. He might have, admired indigenous people. and did a good thing in stopping the Spanish. The Portuguese continued until the 1880s with slavery, including with blacks. But, he might have done a good thing in stopping slavery against indigenous people, but he did it by arguing to the Spanish court that now we have this route we pass right by the western coast of Africa. Why don't we replace those slaves with black slaves? And that started the slave trade,
Yes. And also, not to mention, they couldn't conquer China as well, too, because the Belgians, they tried to have colonies over there, which is actually interesting. Taiwan was actually a Belgian colony, and I
didn't know that, but I knew that Burma, which is right next to India, it was called Burma then, now it's Myanmar, was a Portuguese colony at one point before it was British.
Yep, Portuguese was there, too. Yep. Yeah, they weren't able to conquer, which is why they needed the slave trade in the Caribbean, because they weren't able to.
And they had the Opium Wars too, because the British were imposing drugs on the Chinese to try to pacify them.
Yep, the imperialists don't forget. They held a grudge. That's why the Opium Wars was a thing. They were like, no, we're still going to try to get y'all.
Well,
and they was able
when
to
they talk about the DEA in the 1980s bringing in crack cocaine to pacify, people of color in the oppressed nations and in the ghettos or whatever they call them. We'll talk about that. That's not the first time that happened. It happened during the Opium Wars as well. So the British don't like to talk about it, but they literally fought a war to try to force the Chinese to be on opium. That's what happened.
And this is why the drug laws in China are still should be criticized, because they're comparable to Texas. But we have a full understanding of why that is, because it was their era of humiliation. They were humiliated during the Opium Wars. This is why they are.
Whatever the Japanese did to the Chinese, they did terrible things, but they never tried to impose opium on them. Only the white man could do something that evil.
Yep.
It's just a fact.
Yeah. Alex, I love when we dive into history because it's important. Like it's a repetition of what's happening today. What
it's
you got.
Imagine all the white bourgeois people that were in favor of nuking the Japanese civilians. Those were civilian targets. It's because of what those Japanese did to those poor other Asian people in China and the Philippines. What about what your ancestors did in Great Britain, imposing the opium on the Chinese people? No, they don't want to talk about that.
Yep. And they need time. They need time to heal. You know what I mean? People are like, oh, well, they're locking away drug dealers. We do that here. They're killing CEOs because they had them addicted to drugs. Well, I wish they did that here.
No. They're executing CEOs for corruption. When you're a corrupt CEO, you get a presidential pardon here. So, who's the real corrupt country here? I'm not saying China's perfect, but we're far more corrupt. There's no comparison.
Exactly. Fucking exactly. You know what I mean? They just killed a CEO 3 weeks ago.
Don't say that. Not killed. Executed. It was a legitimate execution through their tribunal system.
Exactly.
I am not in favor of the death penalty in imperialist countries. But in non-imperialist countries, especially anti-imperialist countries, if that's what their process decides to do, I don't oppose it.
No, I don't, because they went through too much. China would never be colonized.
Che was in favor of the death penalty. That's the thing. You have people that say they admire Che, but they're against the death penalty in all cases. Then they're being hypocritical because they don't realize what the third world has to go through, what China's had to gone through to change its economic status. They don't realize the history then, because they needed those, if you want to call them extreme methods, fine. They needed those extreme methods in order to survive. And in Cuba, and Cuba hasn't had an execution in a long time. This was back in the day. Really and there is no death penalty in Venezuela. You know what I mean? They want to talk about Venezuela being some inferior country. They have no death penalty there. A lot of these countries have laws that are more progressive than us.
Yeah, Venezuela also, they let their opposition run around. You know what I mean?
Run them up, yeah.
So I don't understand, why would they call them an authoritarian country when their opposition is they're getting voted into their parliament. First of all, that's a lie that they're not. Just because you're bitching about the presidency, there still is opposition party in the parliament, and their goons running around killing people 24/7, racist as shit, calling people gorillas and everything.
Not only that, you had a famous Venezuelan singer, Carlos Baute, who was convicted of pedophilia in Venezuela, fled, became a celebrity in Spain, and he gave a speech the other day, said, "Fuera la mona," calling President Delcy a female monkey. That's who we're dealing with. That's what the opposition that we're dealing with.
They all think they're Spaniards. The right wing. The right wing wants to be back with the Spaniard.
Well, he paints his hair. He dyes his hair blonde. Baute. But you can actually see he's got some indigenous. He's trying to cover it up. He's one of those self-hating guys, you know? Yeah.
Right. And you know, back to what Chavez said. Chavez said that he never saw himself as a Latino. He saw himself as black and indigenous. And that is one of the most greatest fucking quotes I have ever heard in my time.
By the way, the Spanish, just like the Southern Italians, have Moorish and Middle Eastern blood because they controlled those regions for a long time. So even if you're Spanish or Southern Italian, you're not all white either.
Yep. I also want to acknowledge what happened with the shooting at the mosque in San Diego. There's some information that came out. First of all, Fox News tried to blame it on Iran. That was crazy. They said that the Shiites were targeting Sunnis, and then this is how dumb Fox News is, because then later the information comes out that was 2 teenage people that were anti-Semitic and also Islamophobic, because they in their manifesto they were talking shit about Jewish people, and they shot up a mosque. They were trying to target the children, but there were security guards. There was a security guard there.
I want to mention something to you really quickly. When the Jews were thrown out of Jerusalem by the Babylonian Empire,
yes,
you know who brought them back?
Who?
The Arabs.
I don't know the sister.
Once their Arab cousins, and Muslim cousins had taken over Jerusalem again, they invited the Jews back and protected the Jews, and they were allies for a long time. Isn't that ironic?
Very ironic. It was for hundreds of years, from my understanding, maybe almost thousands, because the first crusade was Jewish people targeted, right?
And also the Ottoman Turks protected the Jews that fled Spain, received those Jews that fled the Inquisition, and the Ottoman Turks protected Jews in Jerusalem when they controlled Jerusalem as well. So there was different Muslim groups, Arabs, Turkish, for hundreds of years that protected Jewish people, that helped bring their presence back, that helped maintain their religious sites till they came back to Jerusalem. And so, you know, all this mythology of Netanyahu saying, oh, Hitler didn't really want to kill the Jews, he only wanted to expel them. It was this Palestinian mufti that convinced them otherwise. You know, it's all mythology. Or that, like, the Arabs were the one that threw the Jews out of Jerusalem, not the Babylonians. All this is a revisionist history to support Zionism, you know, to support the Zionist mythology.
And do you see and this is why I brought up the mock shooting, because this is the same San Diego leadership that was very Islamophobic in their rhetoric, and then this happens. So when
they want to distance themselves from the shooters, right? Then they want to distance themselves. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me, and I haven't looked into San Diego much. I'm gonna look at that story. I remember you mentioned it the other day, but it reminds me of January 6th. Remember when they first came out and said it was Antifa?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, so why are you trying to pardon them if they're all Antifa? Or they're our supporters. Okay, so you're saying your supporters are so gullible, they're going to let one supposed Antifa guy lead them into the Capitol building and do all that stuff? Like, they're just such full of shit, man.
No, they really are. And one thing I want to mention is that when you look at the camouflage on these shooters, they have the black sun symbol on there. And we all know what the symbol of the black sun represents. It's a Nazi. Right? It's neo-Nazi. You know, people don't like what I'm mentioning, but the Azov Battalion had the same symbol on their camouflage.
There was Africans that went, I'm talking about sub-Saharan Africans, that went to Ukraine to fight on behalf of the Ukrainians, and they rounded them up and shot them. And on video, they said, you should have never came here, you Africans. Like, that's how they showed their gratitude to them. They rounded up and they killed them when they realized those black people trying to fight for them.
And here's a connection right here. Zelensky last month announced that he was sending troops to Israel to assist in the genocide of Lebanon, southern Lebanon and Gaza. How will they assist? They will be manning the drones, manning and operating the drones. So explain to me how a nation that complains about being invaded in a war that's past 4 years has time to send troops to go to Israel.
The Zionists love working with Nazis. There's a long history of this, before and after the Holocaust. I'll give you a perfect example. The president of Chile is the son of a Nazi. You know that, President Cast. Yes. And, you know, his father, Cast, was not only responsible for the gas chambers. He was the architect of the gas chambers in the Holocaust. But after the Holocaust, when the CIA brought him to Chile to back up Pinochet, he actually worked with the Zionists. He worked with some Zionist groups. And they knew what he did, and they didn't care. because this is what Zionism is. Just like Zelensky knows those Azov are Nazis, but he'll work with them against Russia because that's the essence of Zionism. And he has support from like Israeli billionaire. Zelensky is a Zionist. He's a Zionist and he's a fascist at the same time.
And for people that have a soft spot for Ukraine, I am not talking about the citizens of Ukraine. I am talking about criticizing its government.
Well, those citizens voted for Zelensky because he promised to be the pro-Russia guy. He promised to reconcile with Russia. Right. He had a Russian background. His grandfather was in the Red Army. Right. And a lot of the Jews in Ukraine are not Zionists. They're very pro-Russia. So they thought he was going to be like that. What they didn't know is that he had a secret backer in Israel, and he was actually working for the United States the whole time. So he deceived the Ukrainian people. Why do you think he won't let there be another election? Most Ukrainian people want peace with the Russians.
Exactly. And look what we're having right now. They're ramping up because they have drone warfare, and they are attacking residential homes in Russia, in Moscow, Russia. They are attacking residential homes. So is that okay? Explain to me how that is okay. You're okay with Ukraine attacking residential homes in Russia? Who is in these
Zelensky bombed a girls' school in Moscow. They'd just be replicating the United States and Iran and what Israel did in Iran. I mean, they love to go after children, civilians. This is what they do.
The same thing as Zionists do in Israel is exactly what these Zionists
and what they're doing in what's really Palestine, right? But I know what you mean, yeah. And Gaza and all those areas and the West Bank. There was a minister in Netanyahu's regime that was just convicted by the ICC for crimes in the West Bank where there is no Hamas. So, where's the Hamas justification there? No.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And you know, and my thing is, it's like here you are. You have a country that has shown on the Gallup polls that it is a rising over 60% of Ukrainians we're talking about Ukrainians in the East. We already know the ones in the West are full into Russia, even though the rest of the media don't want to talk about it. But in the East, the Gallup polls show that they want land concessions and they want to make a deal with Putin. So they're convinced that Putin wants to sit down at the table and make a deal.
Even most Germans don't see Putin as a threat. You know that, right? They did a poll. Yeah. It was only like a couple years ago, right in the middle of the war with Ukraine. They did a poll in Germany, and 95% they said the biggest threat was the U.S. And like 3% said Putin and 2% said somebody else, maybe the president of China, maybe Jinping. But like the overwhelming majority said it was not Russia. So because a lot of times when they're running for chancellor, they say we're going to do business with Germany, we're going to buy their oil again, we're going to do everything good. And as soon as they get in power, they get some pressure from NATO or the United States, and they go the other way.
Yeah, I mean they built a fucking pipeline together. When Angela Merkel was
which the U.S. blew up and blamed on Russia. Give me a freaking break.
Right. And now look at their economy now, because they have to pay overpriced prices to America just
at one point the euro for the first time since it was invented was weaker than the dollar. That's how hurt so much the EU economy that the U.S. wouldn't let them buy Russian oil anymore.
Man, I can grab my phone charger, my laptop charger real quick. So talk to the people.
Well, I think what Comrade Jamar and I are trying to say is that it's all related. If people really listen to our whole conversation, they'll see that it may seem like tangents, but it's all going back to the same thing. Like, for example, there's even, I wanted to mention this earlier, Zionist groups that have backed actions against Venezuela. For example, Netanyahu paid for the pardon of former President Hernandez in Honduras, the narco president. He paid Trump to pardon him. That came out. And people are like, what does Netanyahu have to do with El Salvador? It's geopolitics, man. I mean, there's Israelis now that want to have like a plan B to colonize part of Argentina and deal with Malay. Malay did like this DNA test and found out like his mother was part Jewish or something. And ever since then, he's been obsessed with Israel and, obsessed with pleasing Trump. And, so Malay, they passed a law saying a foreigner can burn down the forest and the Patagonia, part of Argentina. And all of a sudden, these Israeli tourists show up and all these areas get burned, and they said they're going to give it over to the Israelis. You heard what I was saying, right? I'm like, why did Netanyahu pay for the pardon of President Hernandez of Honduras? because they have geopolitical interests in Central and South America, including Argentina, as they're just alluding to. So it's all related. The Zionists have their role in this hemisphere as well.
Yep, it's all connected. This is the ruling power. You know what I mean? This is the coalition of the ruling power, and right now we're seeing the Zionist connection more than we have ever seen. You know what I mean?
By the way, I want to talk about the flotilla because last time we had a guest on that was connected with the flotilla. They completely humiliated. Well, they tried to, right? Completely humiliate all those activists that were on board, and a lot of them were close to members of parliament in Europe.
Yes, they were.
And now you have even Italy, because Meloni in general has been pro-Israeli. She said that she doesn't want to go along with the United States against Iran, but in general she's been pro-Israeli. They even pissed Meloni off so much that she's talking about maybe rupturing relations with Israel. So a lot of these countries in the EU, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and a few others, they're like, you're now attacking our citizens and capturing them, humiliating them on video that were part of the flotilla. This is just hurting Israel even more. But Israel is led by a madman named Netanyahu with the full backing of the Trump regime.
Yep. And did you see what Smotrich said a few minutes ago?
Smotrich is the one that the ICC just convicted for crimes in the West Bank. But what did Smotrich say?
He threatened the world. He said we will respond with war.
Like nuclear.
These fucking Zionists.
The nukes they're not supposed to have, right? Supposedly they don't have them. But guess what? Oliver Stone came out recently because he took a lot of criticism for not talking about Israel's role in the JFK assassination. He finally admitted it. He said, yes, JFK was trying to stop the Israeli nuclear program when they were first starting, and they were involved. Yep. Of course they were involved. The Mossad, CIA, they're all connected with one another.
Yeah, I mean, the nuclear program, I did a little research on it. That it's very difficult. Let me just explain. It's very difficult to research how Israel has nuclear weapons because
they have it because of Pollock. Remember Pollock got pardoned by Trump?
Yeah.
Pollock was convicted of stealing U.S. nuclear secrets and giving them to Israel.
Yes, and France helped them develop these nukes.
He was pardoned and sent to Tel Aviv. Now he's walking the streets of Tel Aviv.
Yep. And the reason why they can't acknowledge that they have nukes is because there is a law that you should not be sending this kind of aid. We send crazy aid, money, weapons, everything.
Military aid.
You're supposed to be sending all this type of aid to a nuclear powered country. Yep. So them acknowledging nukes means that there is a scandal, there is a corruption, and them being aided by America so much. They can't acknowledge it just off of legal terms.
Well, you saw that video from like the 1970s when Netanyahu had dark hair, and he's like, Iran is 5 minutes from getting a nuke, and it's like a parody, right? Because they showed like all the times he said ever since the 1970s till today, they're 5 minutes away from getting a nuke. If anything, he's pushing them to finally do it, but it's just ridiculous, yeah.
Right. So this is a very I think we're in the most dangerous time since the Cold War. Right now, this is a new Cold War, a Cold War with implications of 9 different nations who are known to have nuclear power, and whoever else are given nukes just off the NATO treaty. You know what I mean? There's just so much danger in this, and the reason why I'm glad you said it, because I heard you. I have my earbuds on. That this is all connected. This is. Because who is involved in all these conflicts? America, Europeans.
And remember, South America is also part of America. We're talking about the U.S. empire, yeah.
Right. We are in World War III right now, already. And it's just going to escalate and escalate and escalate and escalate. You know what I mean? And I don't even know, I'm sorry to say this.
Cooler heads prevail. I don't know if diplomacy will prevail. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. I was just about to say that, right? Diplomacy has to prevail in some way. That's the only way this could end. These people are insane. You know what I mean? They are absolutely out of their minds.
But they have no respect for diplomatic immunity. It wasn't just Alex Saab. You remember 2019, I was involved with the Venezuelan embassy that they were violating in D.C. When there's no respect for diplomatic immunity, when there's no respect for the law anymore, it makes it hard for diplomacy to have a role.
And the fact that we're seeing European countries now, I know everybody's excited they're actually saying something, but now they are saying something. Now, this genocide's been going on since 1948.
And there were massacres against Palestinians before that too. But ever since they became a state, absolutely constant attacks on the Palestinians.
Constantly. And the videos we have the videos here on Instagram. I'm having issues with download issues, so that's why I'm not playing them. But go on our Instagram, you will see how they are treating the flotilla people. And one of the people that was actually attacked when she yelled "Free, Free Palestine" was actually the sister of the Prime Minister, Georgia Maloney. So there's a very
I didn't know that. No wonder why she's also
exactly. And then also the Irish president. No. Yeah. Hold on. Let me make sure. I don't want to mix up my information.
I'm sure there was Irish members in the flotilla too.
It was the PM sister, and then there was a relative of the president of Ireland.
Yeah, they were connected to the leadership and the parliaments of Europe. A lot of these flotilla members, absolutely. At one time, you had Tony Blair's sister-in-law go to Gaza.
Right. And imagine if they attacked Tony Blair's sister-in-law. Well,
they wouldn't let her out. She almost got stuck and couldn't get out of Gaza. The Israelis wouldn't let her out through the border. They didn't care that she was related to the Prime Minister of England at the time. Yeah, crazy.
And this is the
I was in touch with her back in the day. She actually converted to Shia Islam. I can't think of her name right now, but she was the sister of the wife of Tony Blair. Yeah.
Oh crap! It's 5:31. I have to do a hard leave because I have to go to a graduation dinner.
No problem, brother.
Yeah,
hopefully we'll have a guest on or other co-host on for next Friday.
Yes, I'm actually looking around. We might actually have a Democratic socialist who's running for office that is very left.
You know what I'm going to ask him? I'm going to ask him about Latin America. I want to know
we might have it on. We'll see. So I'm very excited for next week. Next week should be very good. So please, guys, like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed the conversation. Like I said, you're not just getting political commentary, but you're actually getting political commentary on a educated academic lens here, and a working class perspective as well too. So this is a very rarity that you hardly ever see in the mainstream. So please like, share, subscribe, and please be on the
Or if you do hear it in the mainstream, they're not welcome back. I'll tell you that.
Right. They'll get like 5 or 10 minutes to school these dumb motherfuckers, and then they're like, yeah, we're never bringing him back.
We're not going to bait that person again, yeah. Hey, tonight is the book release celebration, man. I'm having a great Friday night. You have a great weekend, okay?
Yes. Congratulations, brother. Congratulations.
Thank you. Peace out.
Have a good day. And see everybody. Have a
blank period, yeah. On my black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?